Hello, I'm Rebecca Parrish. I'm going to run you through a quick tutorial on editing footprint roofs in Revit. We're going to be starting with a very simple building in Revit. This building is a two-story building so far without a roof. If I go down into my project browser and click on one of my elevation views, I'll go to the south elevation here. I can see that I've made an additional level that I've called the roof level. I did that using the level tool. If you look up in the ribbon underneath the architecture tab, which is our default tab that we start out with, I created a new level up at this roofing level, and that's the level that I intend to draw my roof on. In order to draw the roof on that level, I would tend to go to my level plan view. Here it's called the roof level, and that's where I'm going to use my roof tool. If I look underneath my architecture tab, I have the roof tool here. By default, Revit puts you into the roof by footprint, which means that I'll be making a roof that doesn't have curves, but is either flat or sloped. I can do both of those options using this roof tool. So I click on this roof by footprint button. By default, Revit has me in pick walls, which means that I can select existing walls and pick to them to define the edges of the roof. So right now I am in sketch mode. As soon as I click the roof tool, I went into sketch mode. Everything else in my screen appears gray. And in order to leave this successfully having drawn a roof, I need to make a closed loop. And when I'm done with that, I need to click my finish button. But we're not there yet. Haven't drawn anything. I need to pick existing walls in this case. This is selected by default. If I hover on the inside of this building, I'm going to make a parapet roof. So the roof is simply going to go out to the inside edge of my walls, and the walls are going to extend above it. I'll hover here. In order to pick all four walls at once while I'm hovering on this inner edge, I'm going to click my Tab key on my keyboard. I can see that selects the whole chain of walls, and then I pick with my mouse, and all four of those have been chosen now. If I click Finish right now, I have been defaulted to not having any slope on this roof, so it would be a flat roof. I can see before I click Finish that on my options bar here, Define Slopes is not selected. That means no slope will be coming from any of the edges of this roof. Also, the roof won't have an overhang. The default is 0. I'm going to click Finish, and I have just made a flat roof. If I go into my 3D tool, I can see that I now have a roof. If I want to select that roof, I would hover near the edge of the roof and then pick it, and there it is. Now, this may not be the roof that I decide I want in the long run. Maybe I want a sloped roof. Maybe I want a roof with an overhang. I can make all of those changes after the fact. And what I do in order to do that is I select the roof, again near the edge, and then I come up under the ribbon and say Edit Footprint. If I pick Edit Footprint, this puts me back into sketch mode. You'll notice how everything's gray again, and I have this loop that I'd initially drawn. Now, if I want to make changes to that, say I want to put a slope on this roof. Say I want it to be a shed roof with a single slope going across the entire roof. Here's what I would do. I would need to pick which edge I wanted the slope to start at and go up from there. Say I wanted it to start at the front here. I would pick this front edge, and then I would come up under my options bar, and I would check Define Slopes. This means that we are wanting to put a slope on that edge going up from there. By default, Revit, in this particular template and settings I've got going, is defaulting me to a 30-degree slope. If I'm happy with that, I can click Finish. And that takes me back out of sketch mode. And you can see I've just created a fairly strange roof here, but it does have a slope on it, so I've accomplished that. Now, with a sloped roof in general, it's not going to be a parapet roof with this kind of slope on it. You're going to want this to extend out beyond the walls of the building. So I can change that too. That would be changing my overhang. In order to do that, I have a completed roof here. I'm out of sketch mode. I need to get back into sketch mode. So I need to select this roof again and pick on the Edit Footprint in my ribbon. Once I've done that, I can alter really anything about this roof. If I want to put an overhang on here, in general, I would want to get myself out of a 3D view and into a plan view where I can see my horizontal dimensions more accurately. I'm going to go to my roof floor plan view. In my project browser, I double click on the roof floor plan, and then I'm going to select an edge and change it to be what I want it to be. Once selecting it, I can hold down on my mouse and pull out. I can change this overhang to anything I want. Say I want a 1-foot overhang on this side. I pick on that text, temporary dimension text, and I type in 1 and enter. That gives me a 1-foot overhang. I'll do the same thing with the front of this building. I'll pick on that edge, I'll drag this out, then I'll pick on that text and I'll change it to 1 foot. Say I want a different overhang for the sides of the building. I'm going to pick on the sides, drag out. Say I want a 2'3" overhang on the sides. I'll pick on this text and I type 2 space 3 and enter, and that gives me a 2'3" overhang. I'll do the same on this side, although really I could put 4 different overhangs, 1 for each side if I wanted to. If I want to see how this all looks, I click my finish mode, and this gives me, in plan view, this gives me a fairly strange looking view, but I'm going to go to my 3D view and see what I get here. I can see that I accomplished what I intended, that I got my roof to go over the walls, the edge of the walls, with the overhangs I was specifying. Now, I don't like these walls looking like this. I would want them attached to the roof, and by default they are not. They're separate from the roof. In order to attach walls up to a roof, what you need to do first is we're going to be editing the walls. In general, with Revit, you need to select the object first that you want to edit, and then the options become available to you to make that edit. I want to select all these 4 walls at once, so I'm going to hover at the edge of 1. Before I pick anything, I'm going to click on my tab key on the keyboard. So I'll click on that tab key, and that selects my full chain of walls, and then I'll pick on my mouse. I've selected all 4 walls. Now I can attach those 4 walls to the roof with this option that's appeared up in the ribbon, Attach Top or Base. If I click on that option, the default that shows up in the options bar is top. That means we want these to attach at the top of the walls to the roof if we pick that, which we need to do. I'm going to select this. If, by the way, we wanted to attach walls downward, say to a foundation far below, we would be changing that option to base. But instead we want to go upward towards the roof. So I will pick this roof, and now all 4 of these walls are attached to the roof, and they will stay attached unless we ever choose to detach them at a later date, in which case we'd have to select them and choose detach. So now we have this fairly steep pitched roof. We can change this roof again. If, for example, I decide I don't want a shed roof, but instead I want a gable roof, I could pick on that roof. I would choose Edit Footprint. In order to get a gable roof, what I want to do is have a slope coming from the front edge like it is. Also, I'm going to want a slope from the back edge. So I could select this rear edge and put a define slopes onto that rear edge now as well. Perhaps I would want this edge to slope up at a steeper pitch, maybe 60 degrees. I click Finished once I have that specified, and now I have myself a gable roof. I can decide after the fact that I want both of the slopes to be equal, in which case I would have to select that roof with unequal slopes, edit it, and change those slopes to 2 equal slopes. For example, say I wanted 2 40-degree slopes. I would pick each one, select the text, and change it out. And then click Finish to complete the roof. And now we have slopes that are equal on both sides. What if I did not want these slopes at 40 degrees, but I wanted them to be reading, say, at 2 and 12? What I would have to do is go into the Manage tab. This is where we have our universal settings for our project. And I would go underneath Project Units. Underneath Project Units, I can change the slope from decimal degree default to a rise in some figure per every 12 inches. So 2 inches rise vertically to 12 inches of run horizontally. This is Revit's default in some older versions. Some of the newer versions now have degrees as the default. After I've done that, my roof by default will be reading in slope, and you can see that the slope I've got specified here is a fairly strange one. I could always, now that I have the roof selected, edit it and change this figure out to whatever I would want it to be. Say, for example, I wanted this to be a 6 and 12. And there we have it. Now let's take a moment to change that strange roof plan view that I didn't resolve earlier. If I double click back on the roof plan view, it still looks odd, a little different. What's happening here is that the view, the roof plan view, has cut the visibility at 4 feet above the roof level. We can change that by scrolling down to the bottom of the Properties palette. I drag this bar down and I click Edit next to View Range. When I do that, I pull up a dialog box. What it tells me is that this view is being cut 4 feet above the roof level. We can make that level higher. We'll also have to make the top level of the view higher. We can put it way high up. Let's say put this 50 feet up. And we'll put that cut plane 50 feet up too. That essentially raises the top of the view range and also the top of where the view cuts at. If we hit apply, we can immediately see that the ridge of that roof is now visible. If we like what we see, which I do, we can say OK. Now that did not affect at all the 3D view. The roof was complete the whole time. It really only affects the plan view of the roof level. We can roll down here, double click on level 2. That's our second floor view, our level 1 view. They all look pretty good to me. If we go back to the 3D view, I think things look great. If you have a hard time visualizing what you're looking at in this black and white view, sometimes it helps to go underneath the view control bar and change your graphic display options from hidden line, which is the default, to some other option. Here's the shaded option, and you can really get a solid visualization on that building then. There's also a realistic option, which gives you some sense of how that building would render. Thanks for following through with this. Bye for now.